Welcome to the Living to 100 Club podcast. Here's our host, Dr. Joseph Casciani.
Well, hello to everyone joining us today. You're listening to the Living to 100 Club podcast, and I'm your host, Joe Casciani. I'm passionate about helping people embrace the principles of psychologically healthy aging, staying positive, finding purpose, and making the most of all the years we're given, no matter what challenges come along. Each episode, we bring you conversations that educate and inspire, guiding you to age with resilience, optimism, and a positive mindset. Thank you for being part of this journey with us. Now let's dive into today's conversation. Falls are one of the greatest health risks for older adults, and traditional gait training often lacks the cognitive component necessary for reducing fall risks. In this episode, I sit down with Hilik Harari, CEO of GaitBetter, to discuss the intersection of cognitive capacity and mobility, and how virtual reality technology is revolutionizing fall prevention. Hilik shares insights about how GaitBetter's system, an AI-powered treadmill-based training tool, improves walking ability and cognitive function through gamified challenges and real-world simulations. With clinical trials demonstrating a 70% reduction in fall risk, this technology is changing the landscape of rehabilitation, senior living, and preventive care. First, a little background. Hilik Harari is the CEO of GaitBetter, a training solution for gait rehabilitation and fall prevention. With more than 20 years of international experience in early and late-stage technology companies, Hilik holds extensive experience in strategy, business development, marketing, product, R&D, and professional services. Prior to co-founding GaitBetter, Hilik held different executive and operational positions, including with Cryon, Clear Forest, and Invest.com. Hilik holds a BA in computer science from the Tel Aviv Academic College and EMBA from Kellogg Rekanati, Northwestern University, and Tel Aviv University. Hilik, welcome to our program today.
Thank you for having me, Joe.
Oh,
Thank
you're
you for
very
that
welcome.
introduction.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to our conversation. This is an important subject. I always
Same
like to
here.
begin by asking our guests to maybe share the highlights that brought you to where you are today. You've covered a lot of ground. We know I touched on some of that in the intro, but what are the pivot points that really stand out that brought you to where you are today?
Sure.
Yeah.
So, well, I've been in technology solutions throughout my career. But well, now almost 7 years ago, I decided it is time to take those experiences and really make change in people's lives because, there's no more rewarding type of job that you see that your work can actually impact people's lives. So it's not more,
Yeah.
just making money for yourself or making money for your clients, but we really wanted to make some impact in the world, and that's what I intend to do for the rest of my career.
Sure, sure. So, what inspired the creation of GaitBetter? What problem do you target? What's the aim of GaitBetter?
Sure. I've been associated and working with one of the leading hospital universities in Israel. It's called
Yes,
Ichilov Hospital in the heart of Tel Aviv. And the research team that I'm familiar with, came up with this brilliant idea that by mixing up and intervene cognitive therapy or cognitive training together with gait therapy, we can lead to much better outcomes and enhance older adults really helping them to live healthier, longer,
Mm.
and mostly healthy life and aging. So, when I'm thinking about it, often we talk about longevity and long life, but it's really living healthy aging.
Yes, sure.
And that's what we want to achieve. And that's what the research team have found a way to address that. And I thought that that would be a brilliant idea to bring to market and
Mm.
make impact.
Yeah, that's so interesting. How do you see that connection working between cognitive functioning and walking ability? What's the link there?
So that's fascinating. We often and historically, both researchers and practitioners kind of related falls to maybe slow gait and some motor limitations, and then cognitive decline. And I will say a word about cognitive decline. And cognitive decline was mostly associated with dementia. But over the last, I would say, 15 years, there's a body of evidence that show that the two are tightly related. So decline in cognitive capacity affects your gait,
Mm.
but and walking abilities, and so the opposite, right? Decline in walking abilities may impact your cognitive skills. So researchers found that the two are, tightly related to each other
Hmm.
and affect one each other.
Wow.
Now, I want to say something really important about cognitive decline. When we're talking about cognitive decline, people are immediately referred to, uh, is it dementia? Are we
Sure.
talking like severe diseases? The answer is no. We're talking even about slight alterations in executive function
Yes.
skills. So, what are executive function skills? And we can all feel them every day. They have to do with dual task abilities.
Mm.
Can we do multiple things in the same time? Do we still sharp on that short-term memory?
Uh-huh.
Do we can we do we pay attention to the surroundings?
Hmm.
Right? I asked my dad one day, he failed. I asked him, so why did you fail? And he gave me the same answer that 95% of all the adults that I meet would give me. I didn't pay attention.
I didn't pay attention.
And paying
Yeah,
attention, that's a cognitive
yeah,
skill.
yeah, yeah. So you're right. Yeah, I can see the executive functioning, the attention, the kind of processing, the speed, the decision making, all
Exactly.
that works together, and one affects the other, one supports the other, and vice versa. So if
Correct.
there's a decline on one part, it's going to affect the other. So GaitBetter,
You,
the approach is focusing on maintaining cognitive
so
function.
Joe, before I'm diving into this, I will tell you, give you some more interesting approach to look at that.
Yeah.
You can think about it as a gas of tank in a car,
Uh-huh.
right? When we have enough reserve, it would go smooth for a longer time. But when we start losing that reserve, things get
Mm.
problematic, right?
Okay. Okay.
And the problem is that as we age, that reserve decline, right? That reserve of the connectivity and
Mm.
the ability for cognitive and motor skills to work really good together, that
Mhm.
reserve decline over time. And in order to reverse it, or at least maintain the status, we want to practice that. It's like a muscle.
Yeah.
We want
Yeah.
to practice both of them at the same time.
Yeah.
And this is our approach. What we're doing with GaitBetter is we add cognitive exercise, or we couple
Mm.
cognitive exercise with walking abilities.
Yeah.
And we do that in a safe environment, in a way that people can improve the endurance. They can walk longer. They can take more strides.
Hmm.
Again, in a safe environment, and by doing that, we impact their lives.
Yeah. So that's interesting because most approaches that focus on cognitive training, maybe motor tasks or cognitive skills, they're looking at maintaining cognitive functioning, but you're looking at that plus maintaining the walking ability.
Correct. So
So
let me tell you how we do that.
you
Right?
have two approaches. Yeah, how do they work? Tell us about that.
So
Range.
actually,
Yeah.
we took what may be considered kind of uh, I hate to call it simple, but it is a straightforward approach. But it can only be enabled with harnessing technology. So we place a single camera in front of any existing treadmill. We're not selling treadmills, right? We're providing an add-on to existing treadmill.
Mm-hmm.
We place a camera in front of any existing treadmill. Using our own proprietary technology, we track gait movement in real time.
Mm-hmm.
And then we project those gait movement onto a simulation that is displayed on a front screen. We are not using goggles because people feel they don't like it too much and they may lose their balance really quick. So imagine that you're walking on a treadmill. Now you see the reflection of your feet movement on the simulation. So you're kind of feeling that you're walking in an outdoor environment that resemble real life experiences.
So you see your footsteps on the screen. Okay.
Correct. You more than just your footsteps, you literally see the movement of your feet, right?
Okay.
The 3D trajectory of your feet themselves.
That's great. Good. Okay.
Now, when we do that, then it becomes interesting, right? Then we get you to walk in a personalized training that involves both motor exercise. So you need to cross over virtual obstacles.
Oh.
And we use hurdles and puddles. We use hurdles so you will practice step height because we really want to get those knees high to make sure that you cross curbs and other type of obstacles properly. And then we use puddles to practice step length because we know step length is really important. So, and as you do that type of exercise by crossing over virtual obstacles, you're being challenged with different cognitive demands that affect your executive skills. Let me give you some examples.
Yeah.
So in one exercise, you will walk down a path in kind of like a wooden environment, and animals appears on either side of the screen or other side of the path. And you need to, as you do that obstacle negotiation, you need to spot on those animals and click a button on which it appears, right? So that will practice your attention abilities, your scanning abilities. All of these are executive function. Another exercise will involve memory and navigation. So in this exercise, we will ask you, oh, you're walking in this city type of environment, looks like a downtown New York, right? You'll have cars, you'll have noises, you'll have buildings and people around you, and you need to get to Times Square, right? So you need to navigate your way to get there, and you need to memorize. Oh, how do I get there? I need to, in the second turn I will take a left, and then maybe take the next turn I will take right. Right? We'll give you a little map that you need to memorize, and you need to navigate your way together. So that will work on your short-term memory and decision-making capability. So each one of those games, and we have multiple games, will focus on a specific executive function skill, again, coupled with that obstacle negotiation, crossing over obstacles. And by doing that, again, doing that intervention, doing that type of training, in parallel, we actually lead to a much better outcome than doing each one of them separately.
How do you mean that? We combining them?
So again, if the common approach, if one will go to a physical therapy clinic, the common approach would be that the physical therapist will work on your motor skills, right? They'll teach you how to just walk better.
Okay, walking up steps, for example. Yeah.
For example, and then occupational therapy might work with you on your cognitive skills, right? They'll work with you on attention, on
Yeah.
memory, additional.
Okay.
But that type of exercise, when we combine both in one type of
Mm.
experience,
Mm.
we, we've shown that it leads to better outcomes.
Yeah.
In what sense?
Yeah.
Both motor aspects are improved, so people are walking faster, they take larger steps,
Mm.
which are really important. Um, we see improvement in cognitive skills in various tests, but
Mm.
most importantly, that type of exercise reduces falls
Mm.
and fall risk by more than 70%.
Yeah. I love that. I love that combination. And I'm always thinking about outcomes and, what is the effect of this approach or treatment. And you're saying you see improvement in baseline walking ability and
Oh,
reduction in falls.
absolutely. And not only that, and we've done, before we even brought it to market, we've done more than 8 clinical trials,
Mm.
and we have 22 peer-reviewed publications, including with some of top papers like the Lancet. And what's fascinating about that technology is that today, not only that we know that we actually improve outcomes and impacting people's lives, but we know why. And we've done number of studies that included brain imaging. We've done uh, MRI, post-intervention, and FNI and other imaging technique. And what we've discovered is that that type of training enhances brain plasticity, right?
Ah.
So
Mm.
we essentially create new
Yes.
pathways in
Mm.
the brain
Mm.
that makes the brain eventually more efficient.
Yeah.
And by making the brain more efficient, we create that reserve that we've discussed
Yeah.
before, right? We
Yeah.
refuel the tank, if you will.
That's great. Yeah, I understand the concept of the brain plasticity, neuroplasticity. Certain activities can help us create those new pathways, those new neural pathways. And
Exactly.
even for physical therapy, when we would think that certain brain function has been lost, with certain approaches, we can restore some of that ability.
That's
So
exactly the idea.
that's beautiful, Hilik. Can we extend this to say that if you're walking, just as a practice of daily walking, does that in turn improve cognitive functioning? Would you go
Well,
that?
important, absolutely, walking is certainly important, right? So,
Yeah,
even if you don't use GaitBetter,
yeah,
do those walks. We
sure.
know it's essential for your health. We know that people are,
Yeah.
will maintain healthier life and longer life if they'll practice walking daily.
Mm.
But when you add that cognitive aspect to that,
Yeah,
then you doubling the effect.
yeah. Whether you're on a program like this or maybe just paying attention to your surroundings, where you know maybe at other times you'd ignore it, but when you really pay attention, more mindful of what the surroundings are, maybe the steps and the trees and the traffic and the sounds,
Uh,
maybe that is creating that extra cognitive
uh, uh,
stimulation.
Absolutely. And look, the reason why we built GaitBetter, it's because it makes it easier,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
uh, when you do that, when we don't have a technology,
yeah,
it's just harder to do,
sure,
right?
sure.
If and I can think about, or let's even think about a physical therapy. Maybe some of the audience experience that, right? You'll come to a clinic, they'll put some obstacles on the floor, and then
Mm.
you need to cross over them, right? So you
Mm.
might walk in an exercise, I don't know, maybe 20 feet, maybe 100 yards.
Sure.
When you do that on a treadmill, which is augmented with virtual reality, now suddenly you're walking for a mile.
Yeah,
And when we add gamification
yeah,
to that, because for with each hurdle that we cross, with each cognitive decision that you make correct,
mm,
you get points,
yeah,
and it's all gamified.
mm,
Now you really not only enjoying that creates motivation, that it creates endurance, and we see people taking many more steps, many more strides than you would do without it.
Yeah, that you couldn't typically do in a rehab clinic or a smaller office where
Again, you
important.
could, but
Yeah,
you will not get the same
yeah,
effect, right?
yeah,
And it would
sure.
be much. So we shouldn't be. We should always embrace technology because it gives us that. It opens the door to
Yeah,
so many opportunities.
yeah. Yeah, no, I love the way you're bridging the whole science of this and bringing it into practical use, combining those two modalities. So who are the primary users of GaitBetter? What's your target audience?
So from the people who train with that, we have two type of users, right? So who are the operators and who are the people that actually walk,
Hmm.
right? So let's start with the latter one, right?
Yeah.
Who uses it? The people that use it are mostly older adults, right? And it ranges. We have folks in the early 60s, and I've seen patients in the literally very late 80s. I had a patient 98 years old
Hmm.
that you're using GaitBetter, which was kind of fascinating, right? So we see all that spectrum, but we also it's that technology is also ideal for neurological condition.
Hmm.
So we also have plenty of stroke survivors,
Hmm.
people with Parkinson's disease, people with MS, and various other neurological conditions that affect the gait. So
Hmm.
this is the kind of these would be the type of populations that will use GaitBetter.
Yeah.
And when they use GaitBetter, they use it in they use it in different locations. So we have, and these would be, frankly, at the end of the day, these are our customers. We
Hmm.
sell GaitBetter to senior living facilities,
Huh.
independent living communities, assisted living communities, daycare facilities, right? Adult daycare facilities,
Hmm.
but also to physical therapy clinics, to rehabilitation hospitals, right? So, sometimes when, at least when my investors are asking me, who do we sell to? I'd say, well, anytime that an older adult or people or person with neurological condition and a treadmill may meet,
Yeah.
it's going to be an ideal place for a GaitBetter.
Yeah. Well, even when they don't have treadmills, I guess, because they might not use that in some of these clinics, but well, maybe they do, but I can see the kind of the upside to so many groups in so many different settings. I can see that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And what's interesting, and you mentioned at the beginning that we're using AI. One of the cool things in the application is that the training is automatically adapted to the person needs and capabilities.
Hmm.
Now, by utilizing that kind of advanced technology
Hmm.
and to adapt to a specific person need, now we can apply the same technology to various functional levels, right?
Yeah.
So it might be great for a very early stage in rehabilitation of a person that after a stroke, right? They're
Hmm.
still in a hospital, they can hardly walk, and the system will adapt to that level. So it would be very easy. They might even not walk, just standing and shifting their balance from one side to
Yeah.
another. But then, all the way to independent living facilities, people that will walk at, 4 miles per hour, they are literally almost running on that, right? So we have all that spectrum with a single technology because it can adapt.
Yeah. That's interesting. So the outcomes, again, basically you're saying maybe the first minutes on the treadmill, you do that assessment. So you start where, oh, did I freeze up?
No,
Okay.
I can still
Okay.
hear you.
So you start where the patient is. Hmm.
All right, it's back.
Okay.
It's back. We're back.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we'll get this edited out. Anyway, starting where the individual is, whatever level of ability they have, but it adapts, as you're saying, it adapts and it presents the challenges. Once it does that initial assessment or initial evaluation, it then adapts
Correct.
the program to that. Yeah,
Well, initially and then constantly, right? So
constantly.
initially to get you started,
Yeah,
but then as you perform,
yeah,
right? If the system kind of recognize that you can do even more, right? So
yeah.
it's always keeping you on the edge. We
Okay,
want you to succeed so you'll feel good about it, but we don't want it to be too easy for you. So it would make enough effect,
that's
right?
really good. So if the progress is faster, the program keeps up and
Exactly.
continues to keep the person
Exactly.
at the edge. That's great. That's great. Yeah. So I'm just curious more about the outcomes. Do you show benefits? I mean, have you got some literature, some research that says patients with these kind of motor impairments after X number of sessions will actually be able to walk? I mean, do you have some?
So the answer is absolutely yes.
Yeah.
We've done plenty of clinical trials with more than 15,000 people already use that program. We've seen significant improvement in
Mm,
walking abilities. Again, pace, stride, number of strides,
mm.
cadence, step length, cognitive function. But again, the most important are reduction in number of falls, more than 70%.
Well,
But Joe, all those studies, I love those studies, right? I have I love research and I
yeah,
love
you
researchers.
you got to have the
So
data. You got to have
right.
the metrics. Yeah.
However, what what really keeps me happy is those specific use cases,
Yeah.
right? I have a person writing to me saying, "Oh, I can play with my grandchild, with my
Yeah.
grandkids again."
Mm,
Or I used to use a cane. I walked with a cane for the last 2 years. I'm not using it anymore,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So these are the little
Yeah.
short case studies that I'm hearing from
Mm,
patients that
mm.
really makes me
Good.
emotional.
Yeah. Yeah. The real world successes. Yeah.
Absolutely. The other day, I have to tell you a story.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was literally a week ago. We've installed a system in one of the leading hospital in Detroit, and they had here come this person. He's in his early 70s. He had a severe stroke 1 year before, and he's been struggling with walking since. And that was the same first day that we set up the system, right? So the therapist
Mm,
brought him in, been treating him for almost a year. He came with his spouse, and he's starting to use the system. And I'm telling you, even in the very first training, if wife start to tear,
wow.
and she goes, I haven't seen him walking this way for the last year.
Wow.
And I'll tell you, Joe,
Yeah.
that's me. If I'm going back to what I told you before,
Yeah.
that's what I'm doing. What we're
Yeah.
doing, right?
Yeah.
That's what
That's
makes us
certainly the affirmation, the confirmation that you need. I mean, the data is great, like you say, the data and the research findings, but those small stories, the personal stories, make a big difference. Yeah.
exactly.
Are there some candidates who do not succeed, who don't respond to this?
Yes, obviously, right? There are always what we call in science non-responders,
No
right?
responders, sure.
So non-responders, obviously. So obviously, if you can't walk, you can't use it, right? If your cognitive capacity is too low, right? If you
Mm,
can't really understand instructions,
mm,
if it's a more severe case of
mm,
dementia, of
mm,
Alzheimer, you
mm,
can't use it. And
mm,
then there are some folks that, like anything else, the folks that respond less than others. But for the
mm,
most part, it affects most of the population.
mm.
Again, we've seen
Yeah,
time and time again significant
yeah.
improvement.
So to use your metaphor, you have to have a little gas in the tank.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
Interesting. Sure.
Don't wait, right? That is really important. Don't
Yeah,
wait until it runs out because
yeah,
that might be too late.
yeah. So what are the biggest challenges that you find in introducing this to healthcare settings? What's the resistance if you come across any?
Well, unfortunately, we always need to separate between patient outcomes and healthcare and what it is that we're trying to do, but we're still living in a capitalized world, right?
Sure.
So making good is not sufficient in order to succeed, right? So
Yeah.
when we sell, we also need to show physical therapists and on those other type of clients that we sell to, we need to show them that they can actually also, return the investment in the technology, and how can we help them to also succeed from a business perspective.
So is this always introduced within the physical therapy setting or department in these?
Not necessarily. It can be, again, it can be in a regular, like any gym, right? Any gym can put it in, right?
Okay.
So imagine a gym in a adult daycare center, or imagine a gym in a senior living, in an independent living community.
Okay.
We have not yet created a home version of it, although we are considering.
Sure. So I'm just kind of wondering about the billing aspect of this. Is this covered by health insurance? Does Medicare cover this when it's introduced in a medical setting?
It is, and that's a great question, because we just talked, right? Getting a new technology in the healthcare space to succeed, you really want to make sure that there would be that payers or insurance companies will cover that. And since we do have such a strong clinical evidence, we were able to present that case to Medicare. And now Medicare gives providers a higher reimbursement when they utilize that type of a technology.
Well,
So
good for you.
That helps us to bridge that gap.
Good for you. Gold stars there. That's a major accomplishment. Yeah.
Thank you.
Wow. So what's next for GaitBetter? Any new innovations? You're talking about a home model?
So two areas where we're kind of exploring. I would say that from a research perspective. So I'll say that we have products in the market which we continue to develop and make them more engaged and fun that's what we're currently doing. But from a research perspective, we're exploring two new products that probably will hit the market in the next a couple of years. The first one is a home edition, indeed, that I mentioned. Right. So bringing that to people as a home. Imagine, or sometimes I call it Peloton for all the adults, right? So, but I hate to use the Peloton because they had a bad reputation, so it's going to be better than Peloton, but for all the adults. Right. And the other one, which I believe is fascinating even more, is using the same technology, or leveraging or harnessing the same technology. We've created a test which we call motor cognitive reserve test, right? So before I talked about that reserve, imagine that we can actually measure that. We can measure and quantify how much reserve of motor cognitive capacity a person has. And we believe, and we actually have initial, although, but very strong initial evidence that we can predict neurodegeneration by quantify the reserve capacity. Oops, I lost you again.
Okay.
I lost you.
And then
Sorry.
that's fascinating. If you could establish that as a metric, then you can prescribe certain approaches. I mean, you know where the person should start rather than,
So what we aim to do, and again, without it's getting maybe too scientific and too detailed, but imagine that we will have a test. I will give the analysis, right? Today, when we turn 50 or older, right, we've been sent to do colonoscopy because we want to make sure, that nothing is wrong. Or maybe, if we have some problem with our heart, they'll send us to a stress test, right? To measure the reserve capacity of your cardiac system. So what we're trying to build, and again, we have good evidence that we actually succeeding in that path, is that we're building a test or stress test to predict neurodegeneration. We would like to make sure that we can provide the information to the people and to the clinicians that they have a risk, that they are at risk to develop Alzheimer, that they are at risk to develop Parkinson. And if we know that years in advance, before physical symptoms begin, we can treat those patients and hence prolong the healthier life.
So based on what you're saying, based on their performance on these procedures, you'll be able to predict
Exactly
what rate of decline they might experience based on
exactly.
how well they do with it.
So it's not an intervention; it's a test. It's
Yeah.
more of a stress test, right? So we take a person, we put them through that relatively challenging motor cognitive test. We measuring hundreds of data points through that exercise, and we utilize machine learning algorithm to quantify and measure reserve capacity. And the more reserve that you have, again, back to that analogy, you're good to go. But if your reserve really is low, right? Although you don't have any physical symptoms to refer to other conditions or disease, but you have that low reserve, that means that you at full risk to develop that because that tank is finishing up.
Yeah, greater risk. Interesting. Yeah. Well, you're doing some great things for healthcare, for science, for seniors. I really admire this program. I love it. I think it's great that you can combine the two areas of functioning and use each one to complement the other. I think that's
So
great.
thank you so much.
Yeah, yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. Well, so what's the final takeaway, Hilik? What would you hope our listeners remember from this conversation?
Well, I always say, use your head to keep moving forward. So definitely don't, think about it. Don't know that that's really important. Walking is important, but get that brain to work. And if you do that in parallel, you'll gain from both worlds.
Yeah,
So,
the dual tasking model. Yeah.
exactly. And if you do that with GaitBetter or without GaitBetter, right? But make sure that don't disregard both functions because both of them are really important for
Very important.
healthy aging.
Well, that's a great message. That's a great message. Thank you. So it looks like we're out of time. But before we wrap up, I just want to remind my listeners to visit my website at living200.club. Sign up as a club insider. As an insider, you'll enjoy many benefits, important articles and tips, resources, invitations to discussions, and you'll be able to participate in our private group forum. And if you're affiliated with a senior living community, be sure to explore my Better, Longer, and Happier card deck series. You'll find them at living200.solutions, a powerful resource designed to promote positive aging and engagement in senior communities. Hilik, thanks so much for being a guest. For those who might want to learn more about GaitBetter, where can they go for this?
So just go to gaitbetter.com and it's a gait, G-A-I-T, right? So walking, gait, G-A-I-T, better.com. And or shoot me an email at Hilik, Hilik, at gaitbetter.com.
Okay, that's great. GaitBetter.com and Hilik at GaitBetter.com. Well, thanks again for being part of our programming. I really appreciate this. And I'd love to be the messenger here to share such important information with our listeners. Yeah.
Thank you so much again for having me. And much appreciated, Joe. I enjoyed it.
And thanks to all of our listeners for joining us today. Hope to see you next time.
All right. Thank you.